Maybe? Okay, hopefully there's just the right amount of atmospheric river. Please, please, as always, we have atmospheric rivers, which is basically a fancy way of saying a massive dump of precipitation on our region, which of course, well, we certainly need precipitation, but please try to stay dry, try to stay safe, and if you can, stay off the road. The earlier forecast had it starting at 11 a.m., then 1 p.m., now it's around 5 p.m., so you have a little bit of breathing space. Hopefully that'll be enough for you to do whatever you need to do. Announcements, things going on that we need to know about. Here's one. We mentioned this last time. We're talking about COP30 in Belém, Brazil. Yesterday, you may have heard a massive group of indigenous folks from the Amazon were protesting their exclusion from the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, and literally forced their way into the convention hall, past security. A lot of people got into a scuffle. Notably, this year's COP, the Conference of the Parties, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, is the first to happen since the United Nations International Court of Justice ruled, and I actually didn't know this until recently, that by law, by international law, every nation on planet Earth has to actually meet its fossil fuel reduction obligations, or else you will be violating the international law. Certainly no fan of international law. Donald Trump decided that the United States wouldn't even bother showing up to the Conference of Parties because climate change is apparently a hoax. What's really fascinating and relevant for this class on power, justice, and the environment is that over the last 4 Conference of the Parties, these massive 198 nations around the world meeting to try to solve climate change, the fossil fuel industry over the last 4 years has sent no fewer than 5,400 lobbyists to these meetings to ensure that no progress has been made. And this is just a pitch, just in case any of you are looking for a very, very lucrative career. They have been massively successful. Okay, very little progress, if anything, has been made at all. Gilmar, who is a leader from the indigenous Tupinamba community in Brazil, stated, and I think he speaks for a lot of people, quote, "We cannot eat money. We can't eat money. We want our lands free from agribusiness, oil exploration, illegal miners, and illegal loggers," end quote. So the good news is people like Gilmar and others are fighting for climate and environmental justice and food justice, and they're really our primary hope. So that's what's going on in the world. What's also happening right here in this room today is we have an amazing visitor, a guest speaker. Please note that anything and everything that our guest speaker talks about today is fair game for a quiz or for your next test. Let me introduce him. Diego Magana is the executive director and founder of MiniNature Reserve, which is a nonprofit that reconnects people with nature by creating community-led green spaces that reintroduce native plants into urban environments. He blends environmental action with creative outreach, using public spaces to spark ecological awareness and local stewardship. He is a graduate of the California Institute for the Arts. So he has a Bachelor of Fine Arts. So he's also an active musician, performing at a number of community events in the region. So that dual work of investing in nature and the arts has earned him a lot of recognition, including the El Concilio Latino Leadership Award, the Deja Tu Huella Award, and he was a finalist for the World Expo Cosmos Prize and a winner of the Ventura County Social Justice Fellowship Award. So please join me in welcoming our special guest, Diego Magana.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for having me here. It's a pleasure to be able to tell my story, to tell the story of MiniNature Reserve. And so today I am gonna spend some time telling you the story, and then I'll open it up for questions. Does that sound good? Okay, perfect. So the story of MiniNature Reserve is the story of how a team of guerrilla gardeners grew into something much bigger. It grew into a movement for nature in our cities. And before I dive into the story, I want to give you some questions to ponder. The first is, think about your happy place. Close your eyes, think about your happy place. It's likely in the great outdoors. And I want you to imagine, what would your life be like if you didn't know that place existed? Would you miss it? Would your body miss it? Would it manifest in certain ways? And then my follow-up question is it possible to create your happy place? And are you willing to do what it takes to make that happen? You can open your eyes now. This right here, I also wanted to get into this. This is our core philosophy. It is not a quote that is attributed to anyone. It is something that we collectively, we did focus groups and we all decided that this is our core belief. It is when we learn humans are a part of nature, not apart from nature, that we can begin to heal ourselves, our planet, and our communities. So it starts with that recognition. All right, let's dive in. Okay, so it's impossible for me to tell you the story of MiniNature Reserve without telling you about my hometown, Oxnard. So how many of y'all know Oxnard? Show of hands. Okay, cool. It's a beautiful place. What do y'all think about when you hear the word Oxnard? Can I get it? Anyone want to share?
They have a lot of car dealerships.
Car dealerships, yeah. What else?
Sorry. Great thrifting, too.
Yes, great thrift stores. Everything that I wear is from the thrift store. Anything else? One more. Not a lot of nature. Or, yeah?
I just think of the incredible social justice movements that have been there for like over a century. So, Mexican and Japanese workers striking for better wages and working conditions, coalitions like that. Sorry, I just had to jump in on that.
No, thank you. Thank you for acknowledging that. Actually, I did pay a little bit of tribute. I made this. That is the United Farm Workers Movement flag. And for those of y'all who don't know, Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta did a lot of work in Oxnard, actually. Oxnard was one of the big places, as well as a few places in the Central Valley, Delano?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we are part of that whole movement. But Oxnard is also a vibrant community. We're also called Boxnard because of how many boxers that we have. So Oxnard's great, but it was also Oxnard. It was, I don't know how to describe it. It's concrete. It's, when you look up online and you type Oxnard, the pictures that you get aren't even from Oxnard. They're the prettiest parts of the corners, and it's what we put out for the tourists. But if you get into the actual city part of Oxnard, it's concrete. There's lots of vacant buildings that are literally falling apart. Car dealerships. It's a predominantly low-income community. We are also a farm working town. If you see surrounding the city, there's a ton of farms, right? And there's very little, and I would say almost zero opportunities to connect with nature. This river right here, you can barely see it, closed off to the public. The dunes, the last remaining habitats that are along the coast, closed off to the public. They're privately owned and they're going to be developed soon. Here in the corner, on the very south end of Oxnard, there's even a toxic radioactive Superfund site that has been a mess for 30 years. So the story here really is environmental racism. And with that came a lot of stigma. Everywhere I go, or in a lot of different spaces, you would hear a lot of things about Oxnard, that it's ugly, the nickname is the ghetto by the sea, that we're gang infested, that we're undeserving, and that especially now with we are a town of immigrants, a lot of people that are there to work in the farms, and it's a story of resilience. I feel like a lot of people are there to do honest work, and their living situations aren't always, what you get a lot is a lot of families huddling in one home. So sometimes you have a tiny house and there's like 8 families in there, packed in there, and they're just sleeping on the floor, eat one family per room. It's really awful. And as you can imagine, in a city where there's no effort to make sure that there's places to connect with nature, there's a lot of mental health issues, there's a lot of just stigma, I would say. But all that changed, and my perspective changed, when I went on my first actual vacation. So growing up, my family, we never went on vacations. My dad was unemployed for a good chunk of our time growing up, and so it was always too expensive. No, we're not gonna go have fun. We're gonna stay here, we're gonna work. I'm gonna sell avocados or whatever. But when we all graduated high school, my sister, the leader of our family, as I call her, she's decided, no, we're gonna go on a trip, and each one of you is gonna give me $50 until we save enough money to go on a trip. So every month, I paid my sister $50, and so did my brother. We all had jobs. And then when we saved enough money, we booked a trip to the Grand Canyon, and that changed my life. How many of you have been to the Grand Canyon? Yeah, it's incredible. To this day, it's the only national park that has made me cry, just at the sheer size of it. I'll never forget standing there and seeing neon blue lightning off in the distance, the pink sunsets, the rainstorms that are really huge, but they look so tiny because they were so far away, forming in a matter of, it seemed like minutes, and then they would release all the rain and then just dissipate. It was surreal to me. So after having the time of my life there, I then drove home with my family, and these forests, these deserts gradually turned into farms, like in the Central Valley. And then those farms gradually turned into concrete and asphalt. And it was then that I realized that I was grieving. I was grieving the loss of nature. I didn't know what I was missing my whole life. I'd never been a person that liked to camp. I'd never been a person that really paid attention to what was growing out in the great outdoors. And then it clicked that, wait a minute. All of this was free. No one had to pay to create the Grand Canyon. No one had to plant all those plants and hired a landscaper to put in fancy irrigation equipment. It was all just free, and it was beautiful. And so then that led me down the rabbit hole of native plants. So I know you all are familiar with native plants. Can anyone give me a definition? No? Yeah.
Like a plant that its home is in a certain area and it thrives in that area.
Right.
It's like like in a cycle of the ecosystem in that area. It won't thrive in other places.
Right. Are you familiar with the native plants of this area? Sort of? Yeah, I didn't know the native plants of my area, but I knew that after going out to the Grand Canyon and going on this trip, that surely Oxnard has native plants. Surely Oxnard, my hometown, was just as beautiful as the Grand Canyon, but in its own way, right? So then came the idea of MiniNature Reserve. I apologize for the formatting. I should have looked at this ahead of time. But the idea was this. It is a pocket of nature in an urban area, grown, planted, cared for, and utilized by the community. So there's a lot of parts to this. A MiniNature Reserve is grown by the community, planted, taken care of, and used. So we just did it. We didn't ask for permission. My whole life was just dirt. But in a matter of one rainy season, we transformed it from the dirt lot that it is into a native wildflower meadow. And we did get in trouble. So on the first, I just wanted to share this. The first one, it was only 8 people. But today our average attendance to these plantings that we do is actually more like 40 people. So I'm really proud about that. And since then, it's also grown into many programs that encompass the growing, the planting, the taking care of, and the using. I also this is the model that we follow, because we believe it's not just about making gardens that look pretty and that are just dead and they don't get used. That is not what we do. We're not a landscaping company. We reconnect people to nature. So that means everything from the beginning, which is the seed. We acknowledge that we don't create the seed. that comes from nature. We take it and we grow it. Then we plant it in the gardens. Then we take care of it. Right here, this is my sister actually. She's harvesting some seeds. And then we use it in cooking classes that we work with Chumash chefs, and they teach us how to cook with it. And we do a lot of work actually with the Mexican indigenous community in our city. That's actually, we have a really large indigenous Mexican population. And then we also do some, this is our wreath making event, and we have one on December 6th. And then when we're all done with this, we get the seed again, and then we start the cycle over. And we call this the seed to community model. So to this day, we've built, it's actually more like 25 MiniNature reserves. We planted well over 3,000, and then this is more like 40,000 square feet of land. So we've done a lot of work to restore native plants in our city, and it benefits the animals and it benefits us. And from that came our mission statement of reconnecting people to nature. It's not just about the animals, it's not just about the plants. It's first and foremost about the people, because we are the ones that take care of nature. And this is a little bit about our leadership, and this is a little bit about what we want for the future. Eventually, we do want to have our own space. Everything that we've done has been pretty decentralized. We rely a lot on community. A lot of people grow native plants from their home, and then we call them up when we have a gardening idea, and then we just all pitch together. But eventually, in the future, we want to open up the first space in Oxnard that is dedicated to educating the public on the native wildlife. So that's the end of this presentation. I did want to tell you guys the story about how we got in trouble, but I figured, how much time do we have?
Another 30, 40 minutes.
30, 40 minutes? Okay. I would like to open it for questions actually before I get into the story about how we got in trouble. So I'll put on like a timer for like